Why is it that so many of us, even in the face of an apparently stable life, full of achievements and surrounded by affection, still feel this subtle but persistent emptiness? An invisible hole that no victory, relationship, or material good seems to fill. This feeling is not a coincidence. It is the echo of a lost memory, the silent lament of the soul, forgotten of its origin, disconnected from its primordial light. Birth, although considered the beginning of everything, also represents the first great forgetting. Upon crossing the threshold of incarnation, we are covered by a veil that prevents us from remembering who we really are and why we came. This forgetting is not a mistake, but part of the plan, a divine opportunity for reunion through choice, pursuit, self-knowledge. And this is where the true path of the golden soul begins. Ancient civilizations knew this. The Egyptians, for example, believed that at birth the human soul was separated into fragments, each with a specific role, and that the earthly journey was the mission to reunite these parts into unity again. They did not see life as a punishment, but as a sacred process of reconstructing the essence. The Hindus, on the other hand, always understood birth as a stage in the cycle of samsara, the incessant rotation between birth, death, and rebirth, where suffering originates from the ignorance of our true nature. In shamanic traditions, forgetfulness is the price paid for inhabiting a physical body. Matter requires density, and in this density, the spiritual memory is muffled, but never destroyed. It is asleep, waiting to be awakened. This erasure of higher consciousness upon incarnation plunges us into a reality where we start to believe that we are only what we see in the mirror. We begin to construct identities based on social roles, status, nationality, gender, or religion, forgetting that these are merely temporary costumes. The soul, infinite and eternal, assumes these roles as an actor takes on a character, but over time, it identifies so much with the mask that it forgets the face behind it. This is the great illusion, the Maya, as the Vedas say. The physical world, so convincing in its appearance, persuades the soul to forget the vastness of what it is. And that's where suffering begins, not as a punishment, but as a disconnection. The golden soul, an ancient term that now resurfaces as a symbol of the essential light of being, is the pure and awakened state of our essence. But to access it, we must traverse the labyrinth of forgetfulness. And this labyrinth is perfectly designed. Within it, we lose ourselves in external desires, social validations, and goals that have nothing to do with our mission. The irony is that the more we seek outside, the more we distance ourselves from what is inside. We lose the sensitivity to hear the whisper of the soul. We learn to silence our intuition, to distrust the invisible, and to ridicule everything that cannot be proven by reason. This is the greatest triumph of forgetfulness, to convince us that the visible world is all there is. For centuries, great masters have tried to pierce this veil. Jesus, Buddha, Lao Tzu, Krishna, all pointed in the same direction. The kingdom is within you. Enlightenment is the cessation of desire. The Tao that can be spoken of is not the true Tao. The Atman is the Brahman. Their words, however, were often taken literally, distorted or transformed into dogmas, losing the liberating power they held. The essential message was simple, but radical. You are already what you seek. You just need to remember. But to remember, you must first recognize that you have forgotten. And this recognition hurts. It confronts. It deconstructs. But it also initiates awakening. This awakening is not always sudden. Often it begins as a subtle discomfort, a feeling that something is out of place. Then crises, losses, disappointments, moments of profound loneliness arise. These are not punishments, they are invitations. The soul uses pain as an alarm, a way to get our attention. When everything seems to collapse, it's because false structures are crumbling so that the truth can emerge. It's at this point that many awaken, not by rational choice, but by surrender. And surrender is the first step to cross the veil. It's not weakness, it's the courage to admit that we don't know everything, that there's something greater guiding us, that there is a higher purpose. The ancient Greeks spoke of anamnesis, the process of remembering what the soul already knows. For them, true knowledge was not acquired, it was recalled. Plato said that learning is remembering, and this memory does not come from the logical mind, but from an inner wisdom that transcends time. This memory of the soul cannot be accessed by books or theories, but by deep introspection, contemplation, and above all, experience. Meditation, silence, rituals, contact with nature, and expanded states of consciousness are gateways that facilitate this remembrance. They are means to bypass the noise of the world and dive into the center where truth resides. Throughout history, various spiritual maps have emerged that have attempted to guide the soul back home. Each tradition has its symbol: Jacob's ladder, the 7 Islamic heavens, the chakras, the Kabbalistic tree of life. All point to the same movement, the ascent of consciousness. But no map replaces the journey. Reading about the soul is not the same as living as a soul. Knowing spiritual truths is not the same as embodying them. Therefore, the path is always individual. No one can tread it for you. Masters point the way, but each one needs to walk with their own feet. And in this walk, stumbling is part of it. Making mistakes, falling, getting up, all of this purifies and reveals. The first initiation of the golden soul is precisely this: realizing how much one is asleep. And this awakening is not arrogant, it is humble. It's not about feeling special, but about remembering that we are all sparks of the same light. There is no hierarchy among souls, only different stages of remembrance. Some are just beginning, others have already traveled long paths. But all, without exception, are heading towards the same destination: the return to the source. And on this journey, each individual awakening contributes to the collective. By igniting our inner light, we illuminate the path for those who come after us. The golden soul does not seek to save itself alone, but to help others remember as well. This is the starting point, the moment when we tear, albeit slightly, the veil that covers the truth. When we look within and feel something calling us, even if we don't exactly know what it is. This call is the voice of the golden soul. It is insistent, loving, and persistent. It never gives up on you. And the more we listen to it, the clearer it becomes. Gradually, the external world loses its strength, and the inner world blossoms. And with that, we begin the journey back home. The journey is long, but each step is, in itself, a sacred act of remembrance. And now that you've heard the call, the crossing has already begun. Forgetfulness is not the end, but the beginning of the great quest. It is the curtain that, once drawn, reveals the stage of existence in its fullness. On this stage, each one of us is the protagonist, carrying within ourselves the spark of the divine. When we awaken to this, there is no going back to sleep. The golden soul, once recognized, demands expression, expansion, experience. And this is what we will do from now on. Decipher the secrets of this sacred manual, page by page, light by light, until total enlightenment ceases to be a distant ideal and becomes the real experience of the eternal now. There is a hidden truth before the eyes of the world, disguised in parables, myths, allegories, and symbols. Throughout the centuries, sacred texts have been considered absolute sources of wisdom, but few have realized that their deepest messages were never meant for literal reading. The scriptures, in almost all spiritual traditions, were written in layers, a surface accessible to all and a hidden core, reserved for the initiated, those who dared to look beyond the veil of words. The golden soul that awakens begins to perceive that behind the doctrines and dogmas, there is a silent code, a subtle invitation to remember who we are and what the true purpose of this earthly experience is. These fragments of truth, scattered like pieces of a divine puzzle, await those who have eyes to see and ears to hear. In the Christian tradition, for example, Jesus spoke through parables, not by chance, but by wisdom. He clearly stated that he spoke this way so that seeing they may not see and hearing they may not understand, making it clear that there were layers of hidden understanding in his words. The kingdom of heaven, mentioned dozens of times, was never a physical place, but a state of consciousness. When he claimed that the kingdom is within you, he was directly pointing to the inner divinity. However, centuries of dogmatic interpretation turn this revelation into a distant and conditional heaven. The crucifixion, more than a historical event, carries deep symbolism about the death of the ego, the sacrifice of the lower self for the rebirth of the divine self. And yet, the message was buried under the weight of institutions that preferred to control rather than liberate. Hermeticism, whose roots trace back to ancient Egypt and Greece, is perhaps one of the traditions that most clearly addresses these hidden codes. Its 7 universal principles, such as mentalism, correspondence, and rhythm, reveal that the universe is mind, that everything is connected, and that there is a profound order behind the apparent chaos. The famous axiom, as above, so below, as within, so without, is an invitation to self-knowledge as a key to understanding the universe. Hermes Trismegistus, a legendary figure who unifies the Egyptian and Greek traditions, said that all things happen by necessity, pointing to an interconnected reality where nothing is by chance. These teachings have survived in silence, safeguarded by mystery schools, far from the masses, to protect their purity. In Buddhism, the sutras contain infinite layers of interpretation. When Buddha says that suffering is born from desire, he is not only referring to material wants, but to the deep desire for permanence, for identity, for the continuity of the illusory self. The teachings about emptiness, shunyata, speak of the absence of a fixed essence in all things, a principle so powerful that it destroys the illusion of separation. Enlightenment, in this context, is not a magical event, but the direct recognition of the true nature of the mind. Still, many get lost in the techniques, rituals, or philosophies, forgetting that they are all just fingers pointing to the moon, never the moon itself. One must see beyond the form, beyond the letter, to access the essence. In Hinduism, the Vedas, the Upanishads, and the Bhagavad Gita are filled with passages that, when read with the eyes of the soul, reveal transcendental realities. Krishna in the Gita speaks not only to Arjuna, but to each one of us, representing the internal conflict between the lower self and the higher self. The war is not literal, but symbolic. It is the daily battle between ignorance and wisdom. When Krishna says, "Abandon all dharmas and take refuge in me alone," he is not demanding external worship, but indicating total surrender to the inner divine self. These are subtle messages, only revealed to those who read with an awakened heart and not with eyes conditioned by tradition. The Kabbalah, Jewish mysticism, presents the universe as an emanation of divine light, structured into 10 sephirot, aspects of divinity that reflect different qualities of being. The tree of life is, in this system, a map of consciousness, a diagram that reveals the path of the soul from manifestation to return to the source. Each letter of the Hebrew alphabet carries esoteric meanings, frequencies, and vibrations. The Torah, according to the Kabbalists, is not just a narrative, but a multi-dimensional code, where each word, each number, carries infinite layers of wisdom. These teachings, for a long time, were hidden from the general public, revealed only to initiates, as they require not just intelligence, but purity of intention. Even texts considered mythical or legendary, such as Plato's dialogues, carry hidden truths. The myth of the cave, for example, accurately describes the process of enlightenment. The prisoners only see shadows on the wall, believing that this is reality. One of them breaks free, sees the light, and upon returning, is not understood by the others. This is what happens to those who awaken spiritually. They see beyond the sensory world, but are misunderstood by those still bound to appearances. The myth is not just a philosophical story, it's a mirror of the soul's journey. Symbolic language is the language of the soul. Symbols speak directly to the unconscious, accessing memories beyond the rational mind. That's why religions and ancient traditions used so many symbols: the cross, the circle, the spiral, the serpent, the eye, the flower of life. Each of them is a key that, when deeply contemplated, can open portals of consciousness. They are not just ornaments or decorative images, they are compacted maps of cosmic truth. The problem is that, in the rush of the modern world, we have stopped contemplating. We have lost the habit of looking in silence, of deciphering, of feeling. What was code has become decoration. However, there is something wonderful happening. More and more people are beginning to see the codes. Free from dogmas, outside of rigid structures, they start to realize that truth is everywhere. You just need to know where to look. A biblical verse, a quote from a master, an ancient citation, a forgotten symbol. Everything can contain the spark that ignites the fire of awakening. And this fire doesn't burn, it illuminates. It dissipates the shadows of ignorance and reveals that behind the words, there is a living, pulsating, eternal wisdom. The golden soul awakens precisely when it recognizes these fragments of truth scattered throughout the world. It understands that no system holds the complete truth, but all have parts of the whole. It does not cling to a single text, master, or doctrine, but drinks from all sources with discernment, guided by intuition and inner light. Each new understanding is a recovered fragment, an activated memory, a restored link with the divine. The search is no longer for ready-made answers, but for direct experiences of the truth. The literal reading of scriptures imprisons. The symbolic reading liberates. When you begin to realize that sacred texts are invitations to inner exploration and not manuals of external obedience, everything changes. Life becomes a temple. Each moment, a verse. Each encounter, a revelation. Each silence, a prayer. The golden soul understands that true teachings are not in dead letters, but in the spirit that vivifies them. And this spirit is the same that dwells within you. When you read with the heart, the sacred book becomes you. Thus, hidden codes cease to be unreachable mysteries and become constant reminders. The entire universe begins to whisper in symbolic language. A dream, a song, a repeated number, an unexpected encounter. Everything carries messages, hints, instructions. Total enlightenment is not just knowing what is in the books. It's recognizing that life is the living book of creation, and that you are at the same time the reader, the author, and the text itself. With this key in hand, the golden soul begins to unite the fragments, and when these fragments come together, they reveal the image of the whole. There are moments in life when everything seems to acquire a different glow, almost imperceptible, but undeniable. A number that repeats tirelessly. A song that plays at the exact moment you were thinking about something profound. A vivid dream that insists on returning, as if it carries a message not yet understood. These phenomena are not random coincidences. They are the language of the invisible. They are the ways in which the soul, behind the veil of material reality, tries to communicate with you. When the golden soul begins to emerge, the world transforms into an interactive mirror of consciousness. Nothing is accidental anymore. Everything becomes a reflection, a sign, a call. The soul speaks in symbols because this is the language of the deep unconscious, far beyond the words we use daily. Before reasoning, before logic, there is an intuitive wisdom that expresses itself through images, sensations, and synchronicities. When you start to perceive patterns where you once saw chaos, you're not going mad, you're awakening. Carl Jung, who delved deeply into this invisible territory, coined the term synchronicity to describe significant events that have no causal relationship, but are interconnected by a hidden meaning. He said that these events are manifestations of the psyche, reflections of a greater order that connects everything, a reality where time and space do not separate, but merely shape the experience. Many describe feeling an unexplainable restlessness, as if something is about to happen, but they don't know what. Others report recurring dreams of places they've never visited, or people they've never met. This is not a product of fantasy. These dreams are symbolic memories, records of other existences, fragments of parallel realities, or even direct instructions from the higher self. The soul uses the dream state because in it the rational mind relaxes and the ego's filters loosen. During sleep, we access subtle dimensions where direct communication with spiritual guides, archetypes, and higher aspects of the self becomes possible. Each dream carries a code, a seed of wisdom, waiting to be deciphered with an awakened heart. External signs are like mirrors of the soul. An animal that crosses your path repeatedly, a word that stands out in a conversation, a numeric sequence that insists on appearing. All of this is symbolic. The ancients knew this. The Native Americans, for example, interpreted the appearance of certain animals as messages from the spirits. The Egyptians saw meaning in dreams and believed that certain words had creative power. The Chinese developed the I Ching, an oracle based on the energetic flow of the universe, which allows consciousness to communicate with the whole. These systems were not superstition. They were advanced spiritual technologies, created to decipher the soul's call in everyday reality. Life begins to respond more directly when you align with your purpose. The closer you get to your inner truth, the more intense the signs become. The universe doesn't speak with words, but with events. It responds to your vibrational state, adjusting reality according to your frequency. If you are in harmony, everything flows. If you are in resistance, everything stalls. This cosmic intelligence, which seems magical to the logical mind, is natural for the golden soul. It understands that life is interactive, responsive, and deeply conscious. Nothing is isolated. Everything is in constant conversation with you. And then come the encounters. People who appear out of nowhere and transform your life. Souls that seem familiar, even if they just arrived. These encounters are not fortuitous. They are reconnections, ancient pacts that manifest at the right time. We call this karmic encounters, but many are reunions of souls from the same spiritual lineage, which cross paths again to fulfill a mission, heal wounds, or expand consciousness. These bonds are magnetic. There is something inexplicable, a deep connection that transcends reason. And in each of these encounters, there is a lesson, a key, an activation. When the golden soul begins to manifest, the world around seems to respond in an almost cinematic way. The signs become so clear that it's impossible to ignore them. They appear in moments of doubt, like beacons guiding the lost navigator. Sometimes a book falls off the shelf right at the page you needed to read. Other times, a random conversation brings the answer you've been seeking for months. These events, although simple, carry the weight of the sacred. They are the universe saying, "You are on the path, keep going." It's as if reality momentarily bends to guide you with gentleness and precision. But there is also silence. And the silence, although disconcerting, is part of the process. The signs are not always constant. There are periods when everything seems quiet. This does not mean that you are lost. It means that it's time to trust. Silence is the space where the soul strengthens, where faith is honed. It is in this apparent void that the golden soul learns to trust in its own light. The call does not always scream. Sometimes it whispers. And in these whispers are the most powerful lessons: patience, surrender, deep listening. The call of the soul also reveals itself in challenges. Crises, illnesses, separations, losses, all these events, no matter how painful, are instruments of realignment. The soul doesn't punish, it corrects the course. When we stray too far from our purpose, life shakes us so that we return to our axis. And the more we ignore the subtle signs, the more intense the warnings become. Until we finally realize, we are not being punished, we are being called. Suffering becomes the soul's last language when all the others have been ignored. Meditating, contemplating, writing dreams, observing nature, all these are practices that fine-tune inner listening. The golden soul is sensitive, but it needs space to express itself. The noise of the world blocks its voice. Therefore, silence turns to gold. In it, we perceive what was always present but hidden, the gentle voice of the Spirit, guiding with love. This voice never imposes, never shouts. It only indicates with tenderness and firmness. And once recognized, it becomes impossible to live without it. You start to realize that everything has a purpose. Nothing is in vain. The falls, the encounters, the signs, the dreams, all form a sacred fabric. And you are the weaver, but also the thread itself. The golden soul lives in this consciousness. It sees the world as a temple, the everyday as a ritual, each experience as a lesson. The call is not an isolated event, but a continuous flow. It begins with a whisper, but ends in a clamor. It asks for presence, attention, and above all, courage to continue. Following this calling is to relinquish control and enter the flow. It's trusting in the intelligence of the unseen, even when nothing makes sense. It's dancing with the mystery, with the signs, with the dreams. It's allowing the soul to guide, even when the mind resists. It's saying yes to the unknown, to the unseen, to the eternal. When you say yes, the universe responds, and the path, though still unknown, begins to illuminate step by step, and each step is an act of faith, and each act of faith, an awakening. Before the golden soul can shine in its fullness, there is an inevitable, non-transferable, and deeply transformative work that needs to be done. Purification. Not a moralistic purification based on guilt or repression, but an energetic, emotional, spiritual, and ancestral cleansing which undoes the invisible shackles accumulated over multiple existences. Each life leaves marks, impressions, records. And when these records are not healed, they accumulate, repeat, and become unconscious patterns. The soul, in its millennial journey through different bodies, cultures, languages, and experiences, absorbs pains, traumas, beliefs, fears, and pacts that need to be dissolved so that the light can emerge in its entirety. Total enlightenment requires lightness, clarity, and inner space, and that's what purification provides. The emptying of the false for the blossoming of the real. The first layer of purification is the physical body, the soul's temple in this reality. For centuries, spiritual cultures have understood that the body is not an obstacle but a portal. However, poor nutrition, addictions, excesses, and a sedentary lifestyle accumulate toxins that not only affect health, but also diminish spiritual sensitivity. A toxified body is a body that cannot pick up the subtler frequencies of consciousness. Therefore, practices such as fasting, conscious diets, ritualistic baths, use of medicinal plants, and contact with nature are ways to prepare the body to be a clean channel. The body needs to become a sacred chalice, ready to contain and radiate the soul's light. When the body is respected as an extension of the spirit, it becomes an ally in the journey of awakening. The second layer is emotional. Here lie the traumas, the undigested pains, the sorrows, the resentments, and the wounds of the past. The soul carries memories of unresolved events, often from past lives, which manifest as inexplicable fears, cyclical repetitions, or blockages in specific areas of life. Emotional purification requires courage to look inward with radical honesty. It is necessary to feel what has been repressed, express what has been silenced, cry what has been contained. It is not about feeding the suffering, but acknowledging it, welcoming it, and allowing it to dissolve in the light of awareness. Techniques such as conscious breathing, energy therapy, family constellation, and memory regression are valuable tools in this process. Every denied emotion becomes a prison. Every integrated emotion becomes wisdom. The third layer is mental. The mind, with its automatic thoughts, limiting beliefs, and conditioned narratives, creates a field that can either imprison or liberate. Mental purification consists of observing thoughts without identifying with them, recognizing that most of the ideas we cultivate are not our own, but were implanted by family, society, culture, or past lives. Beliefs such as, "I'm not enough," "I don't deserve it," "it's hard," "it will always go wrong," are like viruses in the consciousness system. When they are not questioned, they operate in the back of the mind, sabotaging every attempt at evolution. The mind needs to be reprogrammed, not with superficial positivity, but with deep truth. Thought aligned with the spirit has creative power. When the mind is purified, it becomes a bridge to the divine. The fourth layer is energetic. Our subtle field records impressions from all lived experiences. Places, people, objects, environments, everything leaves an energetic mark. And often, we carry burdens that aren't even ours. Empaths, in particular, absorb energies easily, but don't always know how to release them. Energetic purification involves practices such as the use of herbs, crystals, smudging, Reiki, sun and moon baths, contact with the earth, profound silence, and conscious presence. Each of these practices helps to cleanse the subtle bodies, restore balance, and make room for higher frequencies. Without this cleansing, it's common to feel unexplainable fatigue, mental confusion, irritation, anxiety, or spiritual blockages. Dense energy hinders expansion. Clean energy allows the soul's flight. The fifth layer is ancestral. We carry not only our own stories, but the stories of our entire lineage. Traumas, pains, beliefs, pacts, and behaviors are passed down through generations. Often, We repeat patterns we don't understand because they didn't start with us. Ancestral purification requires honoring those who came before, acknowledging their pain, and letting go of what no longer belongs to us. Forgiveness rituals, symbolic offerings, release letters, and practices of reconnecting with the ancestors are powerful ways to transform this bond. To honor is not to repeat, to love is not to carry. When we free our lineage, we create a healing field that resonates both to the past and to the future. We become the healing link between what was and what will be. The sixth layer is karmic. Karma is not punishment, it is consequence. Every action, thought, or intention generates a vibration that returns at some point. The soul, throughout its incarnations, accumulates karmas that need to be balanced. Karmic purification is not achieved solely through good deeds, but with awareness. When we understand the pattern behind a repetition, we dissolve the energy knot that keeps it active. Consciousness is the true burning of karma. Practices of compassion, altruistic service, deep prayer, clear intention, and rectification of mistakes are paths to transmute these invisible debts. Karma doesn't have to be an eternal burden. It can be a springboard for ascension. When we take responsibility for our journey, we activate the power to redirect destiny. The seventh layer is spiritual. Here are the pacts, vows, and contracts made in other lives or planes which still influence our current reality. Vows of poverty, chastity, silence, submission, or suffering, often made in religious or initiation contexts, can profoundly limit the soul's expression in this life. These vows need to be revoked with awareness, intention, and spiritual authority. The soul is no longer subject to the pacts of the past. It can free itself, as long as it recognizes its sovereignty. The spirit, when recognized as the source, breaks all the chains that imprison it. Spiritual purification is the return to the center, to the point where nothing can limit the being. The eighth layer is collective. We live immersed in a planetary egregore filled with fear, scarcity, conflict, and distraction. Collective purification requires discernment to not absorb the contents of the collective unconscious. This means limiting the consumption of negative information, cultivating high-vibration environments, maintaining focus on practices that elevate consciousness, and wisely choosing companions and influences. The golden soul learns to walk in the world without mixing with its illusions. It becomes a center of stability amidst the chaos. It does not isolate itself, but also does not contaminate itself. Its presence purifies, its silence heals, its light dispels. The ninth layer is the shadow. Purification is not just light. It's also about looking at what has been denied, repressed, hidden. We all have shadows, impulses, thoughts, desires, or memories that we don't want to see. But what is denied gains strength. The shadow needs to be brought to light, not to be punished, but to be understood. The spiritual ego often tries to escape from the shadow with beautiful phrases and enlightened postures. But true purification is raw. It is descending into the depths of the soul and embracing the inner monster until it dissolves into love. The shadow, when accepted, becomes an ally. It shows where the strength is. It indicates where the light needs to shine. The 10th layer is time. Purification also means letting go of the past and the future. Living anchored in memories or anxious for outcomes creates a distortion in the flow of life. The soul can only fully manifest in the now. When we learn to rest in the present, without guilt for what has been and without hurry for what will be, we activate a state of grace where purification happens naturally. The now is the altar where the divine reveals itself, and on this altar the golden soul finds its home. To purify is to die to the false. It is to strip off everything that is not you. It is to pass through the fire of consciousness and come out the other side lighter, more whole, more truthful. Enlightenment is not added. It is revealed. And for it to be revealed, what obscures it must leave. The pain of purification is temporary. The freedom it brings is eternal. And when the soul at last sees itself free of its shackles, it flies, it sings, it shines. And this shine is the announcement that the journey of the golden soul continues forward, now with wings, towards the reunion with the source. Within the human body dwells a hidden universe, a spiritual engineering as complex as it is perfect, designed with ancient wisdom and cosmic precision. Far beyond the anatomy visible to the physical eyes, there is a subtle, pulsating, energetic structure that connects our earthly form to the eternal spirit. This divine architecture, present in every human being, is composed of energy centers, vibrational channels, and sacred glands that act as bridges between the physical and the spiritual. The ancients called these internal passages portals, for when activated, they unlock expanded states of perception, deep healing, and alignment with the divine. They are keys encoded in our own body that, when understood and awakened, lead the soul to its totality. The golden soul recognizes that its temple is a sacred map that needs to be deciphered, cared for, and activated. At the center of this system are the chakras, the 7 main energy vortices that spin along the spine, each connected to specific aspects of existence. The first, the root chakra, located at the base of the spine, represents connection to the earth, survival, instinct, and primary life force. When blocked, it manifests as fear, insecurity, or a feeling of being lost in the world. The second, the sacral, located in the lower abdomen, governs sexuality, creativity, emotions, and pleasure. Its distortion is revealed in repression, guilt, or emotional imbalances. The third, the solar plexus, governs identity, personal power, and will. When misaligned, it can generate excessive control, anger, or submission. Each of these centers needs to be harmonized so that the vital energy, known as prana or kundalini, can flow freely, awakening the spiritual potential that lies dormant. The fourth chakra, the heart chakra, is the transition point between the lower centers, connected to the physical world, and the higher ones, linked to the spiritual. It governs love, compassion, empathy, and healing. It is the inner temple where the human meets the divine, where the ego surrenders and the spirit blossoms. A closed heart prevents full awakening, for it is through love that the soul recognizes itself in others. The fifth chakra, the throat chakra, governs communication, expression, and truth. When purified, it allows the soul to speak without fear, with clarity, aligned with its mission. The sixth, the frontal or third eye, is the center of inner vision, intuition, and perception beyond the veil. Awakening this center is to see with the eyes of the soul, perceive the invisible, recognize signs, and penetrate the subtle world. Finally, the seventh chakra, the crown chakra, at the top of the head, is the direct connection with the cosmos, with the source, with the absolute. When activated, it provides states of unified consciousness, transcendental peace, and communion with the whole. But the chakras do not operate alone. They are intimately linked to endocrine glands, physical structures that serve as channels for the expression of subtle energies. The pineal gland, for example, associated with the third eye, is considered the spiritual eye, the portal between worlds. It produces melatonin, regulates sleep cycles, but its function goes far beyond the biological. In elevated states of meditation, it secretes substances that generate mystical experiences, such as dimethyltryptamine, DMT, which allows access to other dimensions. The Egyptians revered this gland, symbolized by the Eye of Horus. Ancient cultures knew that this was the center of spiritual vision. The pituitary gland, or hypophysis, linked to the crown chakra, is the center of hormonal and spiritual command. When activated in unison, the pineal and pituitary create the bridge of ascension of consciousness. The heart, more than a pump that drives blood, has its own electromagnetic field, superior to that of the brain. Recent studies reveal that the heart emits signals that influence all body systems and that its waves vibrate in coherent patterns when we are in states of love, gratitude, and compassion. This confirms what traditions have always said. The heart is the center of the soul. The thymus gland, located in the center of the chest, between the heart and the laryngeal chakra, is responsible for immunity and for the vibration of inner truth. When touched in spiritual practices, it awakens courage and authenticity. The activation of the thymus, combined with the expansion of the heart, generates a frequency field that heals and transforms not only the individual, but the environment around. In addition to the main chakras, there are secondary chakras and smaller energy points that form an intricate network known as nadis or meridians through which energy circulates. The main nadis are the Ida and the Pingala, which snake around the spine, and the Sushumna, the central channel through which the Kundalini ascends. This dormant serpent, a symbol present in cultures around the world, represents the inner divine energy, which, when activated, rises through the chakras, awakening divine consciousness at each point. The journey of the Kundalini is the journey of the golden soul within the body. It is not a destructive force, but a creative intelligence that, when honored and conducted with respect, promotes the deepest and most lasting spiritual awakening. For this structure to function fully, balance is necessary. Energy can neither be in excess nor in shortage. Therefore, practices such as yoga, qigong, tai chi, meditation, mindful breathing, and chanting mantras are essential. They are not merely techniques, but keys to harmonizing the vibrational field, activating the energy centers, and allowing the vital flow to freely circulate throughout the system. Each deep breath, each posture, each sacred sound emits vibrations that adjust the subtle body, clear blockages, and reopen portals. Spiritual discipline is the maintenance of this divine structure. It is not rigidity, it is reverence to the temple that one is. The golden soul acknowledges that it is not separate from the body. It sees it as the sacred vehicle of manifestation. To despise the body is to deny the wisdom of incarnation. We are embodied spirits, and every cell, every bone, every organ is an expression of the divine in form. When we care for this temple with love, it becomes a vessel of light. The body begins to radiate such a high frequency that it becomes impossible not to be noticed. People feel good around you. Environments transform with your presence. It is the inner light overflowing into the outer world. Within this body temple, there is a system of silent intelligence that communicates, guides, directs. Intuitions arise as hunches, sensations, impulses that seem illogical, but carry precision. When the portals are clear, this communication intensifies. It's possible to perceive imbalances before they physically manifest, to capture subtle energies, to feel the truth behind words. Sensitivity ceases to be a weakness and becomes a superpower. The golden soul then learns to inhabit its body with total presence, to live each movement as a spiritual act, to transform the ordinary into sacred. But this temple also needs silence. The noise of the world prevents inner listening. Therefore, the practice of quietness is essential. Sitting in silence, breathing, observing one's own thoughts without judgment, these are revolutionary actions. In this space of silence, the inner portals open, the glands align, the chakras spin in harmony, and the soul dances. It is in this state that true wisdom emerges, not as knowledge, but as direct experience. You feel, you know, you are. The divine architecture of the human body is the greatest proof that the Creator inhabits His creation. Each detail, each system, each interaction reveals an intentional, sacred, and perfect design. Enlightenment does not occur outside. It occurs within, when the golden soul awakens to its own greatness and recognizes the body as the living altar of the spirit. The sacred is not in stone temples, but in the silent pulsing of your heart. And when you align with this truth, the entire structure of the universe begins to conspire for your expansion. The sky reveals itself on your own skin, and you at last remember, you are the temple, the priest, and the divinity all at once. The mind is a magnificent tool, capable of analyzing, creating, planning, dreaming, and materializing. But it can also become the most subtle and sophisticated prison. When the mind dominates, it erects invisible walls around the soul, limits the infinite to the finite, and transforms divine possibilities into repetitive thoughts, fears, and judgments. The golden soul, upon awakening, recognizes that the mind is not an enemy, but needs to be purified and redirected. The silence of the mind is not the absence of thoughts, but the quietness of identification with them. It is in this silence that the soul reveals itself. It is there that lies the deepest portal to the infinite. The problem is not in thinking, but in believing that you are what you think. The silent mind is the ground where the feet of the spirit finally touch. Throughout our lives, we are conditioned to think non-stop. The modern world glorifies mental hyperactivity, the relentless pursuit of information, the constant production of ideas and interpretations. Internal noise is often mistaken for intelligence, but it's merely sophisticated confusion. The mind, when imbalanced, becomes a permanent background noise that prevents the hearing of the soul. And when there is no inner space, there is no room for the divine to manifest. The golden soul understands that to access higher dimensions, one must silence the mental storm. It's necessary to create a space between stimulus and response. In this space lives presence, and it is presence that connects with the infinite. This silence is not emptiness, it is fullness. It is the vastness of consciousness that observes everything, but clings to nothing. It is pure perception, without filters, without judgments, without stories. When we enter this state, the mind becomes like a clear sky, where thoughts pass like clouds, without obscuring the inner sunlight. The Master Eckhart Tolle describes this state as the now, a field of pure consciousness where past and future dissolve and only being remains. Meditating is not fighting against thoughts, but ceasing to identify with them. It is to watch as a spectator, until the spectator himself disappears and only consciousness remains. For the mind to become silent, it needs loving attention. It cannot be forced, only guided. Breathing techniques, contemplation, active meditation, mantras, and observing nature are paths that lead to this state. But the most powerful of all is the practice of continuous presence. Being completely present in what you do, whether washing dishes, walking, eating, or listening to someone, is an exercise in mental silence. Because the present is the only place the mind cannot control. It lives off the past and future, off memories and projections. The present is its death, and that's where the soul is born. By silencing the mind, we open a space to hear something greater. Intuition begins to manifest clearly. Answers emerge from nowhere. Decisions become natural. Doubt loses strength. Anxiety dissolves. The golden soul learns to trust in this silent field, where everything is revealed at the right time. Silence becomes a master, an invisible guide that leads with precision, even without words. Great spiritual masters lived in this state. Buddha, for example, after years of intense search, found enlightenment sitting in silence. Jesus spent long periods withdrawn in prayer and meditation. Lao Tzu spoke of the Tao as something that cannot be named, only experienced in silence. All pointed to the same place, the interior, the fertile void, the silence full of meaning. In this state, the mind becomes an instrument at the service of consciousness, not the other way around. It starts receiving commands from the heart, the soul, the spirit. It ceases to be queen and becomes a servant. And then everything changes. Creativity flows more naturally. Solutions appear with less effort. Communication becomes more compassionate. Relationships become deeper. Life becomes simpler. The golden soul no longer needs to prove anything. It just is. And being, in its essence, is the highest form of wisdom. The silent mind is also a field of healing. Many illnesses have a psycho-emotional origin, fueled by repetitive thoughts, limiting beliefs, internal conflicts, and unprocessed memories. When the mind quiets, the body relaxes. The systems balance out. Vital energy circulates freely. Healing becomes possible because resistance disappears. The body ceases to fight against itself. And in this state, miracles happen. Not as external interventions, but as the natural release of everything that was in disharmony. Silence is medicine. But silencing the mind does not mean eliminating thought. It means elevating its quality, its frequency, its origin. Thoughts coming from the ego are laden with fear, comparison, doubt, and control. Thoughts originating from consciousness are imbued with peace, clarity, creativity, and love. The golden soul learns to recognize the difference. It does not allow itself to be dragged along by the unconscious mental flow. It observes, chooses, creates. It becomes a co-creator of reality, as it understands that everything starts in the subtle field of the mind. A purified mind is a fertile field for the seeds of the divine. Silence is also where great revelations reside. It is in the inner space, when everything quiets down, that the soul can hear the call of its origin. Many mystical experiences, visions, profound understandings, and spiritual awakenings occur in this state. It's not about thinking about God, but feeling God within oneself, realizing that separation never existed, that heaven is within, that the infinite is now, that what we've been seeking has always been present, waiting for the moment when we cease the search to simply be. Enlightenment doesn't arrive like a lightning bolt, but like a silence that fills everything. The quiet mind also makes room for compassion. When we are not caught up in judgments, criticisms, or automatic thoughts, we can see others more clearly. The heart opens, empathy blooms, judgment dissolves, presence heals. We can only truly love when we are not too busy with ourselves. The ego shouts, the soul whispers, and silence is the path to hearing that whisper. When we are present with another, without mental agendas, we offer the greatest gift there is, our total attention. And in that attention, love flows. Living with a quiet mind is living in a state of continuous prayer, not a prayer of words, but of presence. It's looking at the world with new eyes, perceiving the hidden miracle in every detail. It's listening to the silent music that permeates all things. It's walking in peace, even amidst chaos. It's resting in the trust that everything is being guided by a higher intelligence. The golden soul lives in this state. It doesn't deny the world. It transcends it within the world. It becomes a bridge between heaven and earth, between silence and action, between being and doing. The mind, when trained, becomes a powerful ally, but when undisciplined, it becomes the greatest obstacle. The difference between suffering and peace often lies in the space between one thought and another. That's where freedom resides. That's where the spirit breathes. That's where infinity reveals itself. The quiet mind is not a destination, but a path of return to home. A path where each step is a deeper dive into the essence. And in this essence, there is no fear, there is no doubt, there is no separation. There is only being, and being is silence, and silence is God. The soul that awakens undergoes a profound process of internal refinement, crosses veils, silences the mind, purifies the energy centers, and finally approaches what has always been present, the source. Not an external entity, not an anthropomorphic figure above the clouds, but the very origin of all that is. The source is not outside, somewhere distant in the cosmos. It pulses within each cell, vibrates with every heartbeat, breathes through the silence of awakened consciousness. The connection with the source is the pinnacle of the spiritual journey, the moment when the seeker realizes that he is what he was seeking. It is the end of separation, the collapse of duality, the merging of the self with the all. And paradoxically, it is not a moment of conquest, but of surrender. It's not about reaching, but about remembering, because what we are has never ceased to be. Remembering the source is like waking up from a deep dream and realizing that reality has always been waiting, intact, silent, and loving. The golden soul, upon remembering its nature, experiences a dissolution of boundaries between itself and the other, between inside and outside, between time and the eternal. Time ceases to be linear and reveals itself as an eternal now. Space ceases to be a container and shows itself as consciousness vibrating at different frequencies. There is no longer a separation between what is observed and the observer. Everything is consciousness, and this consciousness is you. The source is the field of infinite intelligence and unconditional love that generates, sustains, and dissolves all forms. It cannot be described, but it can be felt. It cannot be limited, but it can be experienced. When the soul touches the source, even if for a second, everything changes. There's no going back to the old state of ignorance. This reunion does not occur only in mystical states or deep meditations. It can manifest in the simplest details. The gaze of a child, the sunset that silences the mind, a moment of gratitude that fills the chest for no apparent reason. The source reveals itself in stillness, in beauty, in presence, When the ego quiets down, it emerges as a flow of peace without cause, a joy without reason, an unshakable certainty that everything is exactly as it should be. It's not about understanding intellectually, but about experiencing. It's a knowing that comes without effort, a memory that does not depend on words. The golden soul, when merging with this frequency, begins to operate in the world with a new perspective. Everything is an expression of the source. Everything is sacred. The great masters of humanity experienced this connection and tried to translate it into words, metaphors, gestures, and silences. Jesus said, "I and the Father are one." Buddha spoke of nirvana, a state of cessation of the illusory self and fusion with the ultimate reality. Lao Tse described the Tao as the principle of everything, which cannot be named but permeates everything. Rumi, the mystical poet, said that, "We are not a drop in the ocean, but the entire ocean in a drop." Each one, in their own language, tried to point to the same point. The source is here, now, in you. But it cannot be possessed, only experienced. And to live this truth is the true rebirth. This connection also transforms our relationship with suffering. When we realize that we are the consciousness behind all experiences, including painful ones, we stop identifying with the pain. It still exists, but loses its power to imprison us. We start to see each challenge as an invitation from the source to expand, to let go, to trust. The golden soul understands that there are no mistakes, only experiences, that everything serves the purpose of awakening, that even pain carries within it the seed of healing, and so life ceases to be a battlefield and becomes a field of revelation. The connection with the source also reconnects us to love in its purest form. Not conditional, possessive, or dependent love, but love as the natural state of being. This love needs no reason. It simply is. It emanates from within, effortlessly overflowing and transforming everything it touches. It does not judge, does not demand, does not divide. It recognizes the divinity in everything and everyone. And in this recognition, it dissolves the illusion of separation. The golden soul, immersed in this love, becomes a mirror of the divine in the world. It does not preach love, it embodies it. It does not speak about light, it becomes the light. The source is also a creative consciousness. By remembering that we are an extension of this supreme intelligence, we understand that our intentions, thoughts, emotions, and vibrations shape reality. We are not victims of fate, but co-creators of existence. When aligned with the source, we create with wisdom, compassion, and purpose. Our desires cease to be fruits of the ego and begin to reflect the longings of the soul. We manifest not to fill a void, but to express fullness, and in this expression, we serve the whole. Each gesture, each word, each choice becomes an offering to the sacred. The connection to the source also breaks with the idea of death as an end. When we feel eternity within us, we understand that birth and death are merely transition portals. Consciousness is continuous, infinite, unbreakable. The body dies, forms change, but the being remains. The golden soul no longer fears the end, for it remembers where it came from and knows where it returns. This knowledge generates an unshakable serenity, a freedom that does not depend on circumstances, a courage that is born from the certainty of the eternal. Living connected to the source does not mean escaping reality or denying matter. It means inhabiting the world with divine presence. It's bringing the source into every action, every relationship, every breath. It's being a channel of healing, of truth, of transformation. It's living with purpose, but without attachment, with passion, but without possessiveness, with surrender, but without submission. The golden soul, by staying aligned with the source, becomes a living extension of the love that creates everything. And this is visible, palpable, contagious. This connection also brings spontaneous wisdom, not wisdom learned from books, but that which emerges from inner silence. You start to perceive what needs to be done, what needs to be let go, when to act, and when to wait. Life flows. The answers come. Synchronicity increases. Intuition strengthens. Clarity sets in. The golden soul begins to live in a state of listening, of receptivity. of communion with the invisible. And in this state, miracles become the new normal. Remembering who you are is the beginning of a new existence, not based on the past, but anchored in the eternal present. You are not your thoughts, nor your emotions, nor your body, nor your stories. You are the presence that observes all of this. You are the space where everything happens. You are the consciousness that witnesses. You are the source in human form. And when this truth stabilizes, everything changes. The search ceases. The effort diminishes. Resistance disappears. And the being simply is. And to be is everything. The golden soul, once reconnected to the source, becomes free. Free from fear, doubt, scarcity. Free from the need to control, prove, resist. Free to live intensely, truthfully, fully. This freedom is the natural inheritance of every being, and it is accessible now. You don't need a guru, a temple, a secret technique. Just quiet down, feel, and remember. Remember that you already are, that you always have been, that you never ceased to be. And this remembering is the return home, the home of the source, the home of the being. After the soul recalls its origin in the source, a new fire ignites. No longer the quest for self-salvation, but the profound call to serve. This stage does not stem from moral obligation, nor from the desire for reward. It emerges as a natural consequence of reconnection with the whole. The golden soul, upon seeing itself filled with light, feels the irresistible impulse to radiate this light, not because it lacks something, but because it overflows. Service ceases to be an effort and becomes a natural expression of being. The awakened consciousness understands that its presence in the world is not random, nor is its gift accidental. Each incarnated soul came with a unique frequency, a sacred talent, a specific purpose to fulfill, something that, when manifested, benefits the collective and supports the evolution of planetary consciousness. To serve, in this context, is not to sacrifice oneself, but to realize oneself. It is not to fade away, but to expand with purpose. The divine purpose is not just about an external occupation or function. It is a frequency, a vibration that manifests in multiple forms. A person may be living their purpose by being an artist, healer, educator, farmer, therapist, storyteller, or simply by being a loving presence in everyday life. What matters is not the title or the form, but the consciousness with which one acts. The golden soul lives in alignment with the purpose when its actions are born from internal listening, when there is coherence between feeling, thinking, speaking, and acting. When the soul is in charge, life flows. The body responds with vitality. The mind becomes clear. Opportunities arise with synchronicity. Doors open without forced effort. Everything fits together because the entire universe cooperates with those on a mission. This call intensifies as consciousness expands. It is not uncommon that, after a profound awakening process, one feels a strong restlessness, a desire to change everything, to do something bigger, to contribute to the world in a meaningful way. This restlessness is the soul's cry saying, "Now is the time to act." What once satisfied no longer nourishes. What was once tolerable now becomes unbearable. The comfort zone turns into a prison. It is the moment when the old self no longer serves, but the new one is not yet fully integrated. This space between the death of the old and the birth of the new is sacred. It is there that purpose begins to reveal itself, not as a ready-made formula, but as a subtle call that strengthens as the soul says yes, even without guarantees. Discovering the divine purpose is to listen to what ignites the soul, what brings meaning, what makes time disappear. It's about noticing where your passion lies, where your compassion resides, where your presence generates transformation. The purpose is linked to what you came to offer the world, not what you came to extract from it. And this requires a shift in focus, from "what can I gain" to "what can I give," not as an imposition, but as a fulfillment. When you give your gifts, you feel alive, you feel connected, you feel whole. It is in this giving that you receive the true return, the experience of completeness. To serve as a channel of light is to assume the sacred responsibility of keeping your energy field clean, your mind aligned, and your heart open. It is to be available for the source to act through you. It is to become an instrument of the higher will, without taking ownership of the outcome. It is to plant seeds of consciousness in silence, with humility, without needing applause or recognition. The golden soul understands that its brightness does not overshadow, but illuminates the path of others. It does not compete, it inspires. It does not convince, it vibrates. It does not demand, it offers. And in this state of loving giving, it transforms environments, elevates frequencies, heals with its presence. Serving also means saying no when necessary. It's about maintaining integrity, even in the face of external pressure. It's protecting your energy from environments and relationships that drain your light. It's not about submitting to everything in the name of spirituality, but wisely choosing where your presence is truly useful. The golden soul does not scatter. It does not exhaust itself trying to save the world. It understands that its mission is to be a channel, not a savior. And that often, your light will be the catalyst for processes that will continue even after you've left. This is spiritual maturity, serving without attachment to the outcome. Planting seeds, knowing that you may not see the harvest, but that the seed was sown with love. The divine purpose becomes increasingly clear as we align ourselves with the frequency of the soul. Often, it is revealed step by step, not as a complete plan, but as momentary directions that call for trust. The golden soul learns to walk even without seeing the ground, to say yes to the unknown, to follow the inner impulse even when the mind doubts. It understands that to serve is not to have certainties, but to be available. It's not about having all the answers, but being present. It's not about knowing the destination, but trusting the path. And this continuous surrender activates the flow. And in the flow, the purpose reveals itself. To serve also means to anchor a new frequency on Earth. Each awakened soul is an antenna that captures and radiates information, healing, codes, and frequencies that assist in the planetary transition. The planet is mutating. Old structures are crumbling. The old world is collapsing. And amidst the chaos, conscious beings are called to uphold the light, not with speeches, but with vibration, not with resistance, but with presence. The golden soul understands that its existence is a spiritual political act. To be awake, compassionate, and centered is, in itself, a form of service. And every small action done with consciousness contributes to the birth of the new earth. This new earth is not a utopia. It is the visible manifestation of a new state of consciousness. A world where love forms the basis of relationships, where truth guides decisions, where individual purpose aligns with the collective good. And this begins with each one of us. The golden soul does not wait for the world to change to then act. It acts, and in acting, changes the world. Even in silence, even in the invisible, even without recognition, because it knows that light does not need to be seen to illuminate. True service also requires continuous self-knowledge. The soul on a mission needs to observe its motivations, its shadows, its attachments. To serve without purifying oneself is to risk contaminating the gift with wounds. Therefore, service is also a mirror. It reveals where there is still vanity, a need for validation, fear of failure, or desire for control. And it's beautiful, because in this mirror, the golden soul continues its healing process. It doesn't serve because it's ready. It serves because it allows itself to be a channel, even amidst imperfection. And this authenticity heals more than any technique. To serve as a channel of light is to accept that you are necessary, that your gift matters, that your frequency is irreplaceable. It's recognizing that the world needs your light, your vision, your unique expression, not to inflate the ego, but to fulfill the part that only you can in the symphony of creation. When each soul takes its place, the whole harmonizes. When each being vibrates its note, the divine music resonates. And this music is the chant of the new age. It is the symphony of Ascension. The golden soul, upon accepting its purpose, begins to live in a state of living prayer. Each step becomes meditation. Each gesture, an offering. Each breath, a conscious breath of life. And in this state, everything makes sense. even the challenges, even the silences, even the pauses, because it knows it is where it needs to be, doing what it needs to do, being who it came to be. And this certainty is peace. It is direction. It is power. Not the power that dominates, but the power that serves, the power that sustains, the power that loves, the power of light that, when it shines, awakens other lights. The true enlightenment is not an escape from reality, but the full integration of divine consciousness into the human experience. It is not the abandonment of the body, emotions, challenges, or matter. It is the redemption of all this through the presence of the awakened being. The golden soul, upon completing its journey through the veils of forgetfulness, through the inner portals, through the layers of purification, and through the calls of the Spirit, finally understands that the pinnacle of spirituality is not to inhabit the heavens, but to anchor them on earth. It is in this plane, in everyday life, in contact with others, in simple choices, that light needs to become action. The manifestation of the golden soul is the point at which the human being becomes divine in action. Not just potentially, not just in theory, but in living, conscious, constant expression. This is the moment of full incarnation of the I Am. To manifest the golden soul on earth is to live with absolute coherence between what one is inside and what one expresses in the world. It's allowing the acquired wisdom to not be confined to the subtle field, to individual practices or moments of retreat, but to spill over as embodied truth in relationships, decisions, the way of serving, consuming, working, loving, and existing. It's allowing the divine to dress in flesh without getting lost in it. Authentic enlightenment does not reject the human, it honors it. It acknowledges that every tear, every pain, every joy, every hug, every sensory experience is part of the miracle of existence. The body, once transfigured by consciousness, becomes the temple where the spirit dances without limits. And this dance is visible, palpable, contagious. The manifested soul no longer needs to prove its light. It just is. Its presence speaks louder than words. Its vibration transforms spaces. Its calm dissolves tensions. Its gaze touches layers that no speech can reach. It walks through the world with lightness and strength, with humility and firmness, with sweetness and clarity. There is no more internal conflict, for the polarities have been integrated. The masculine and the feminine, the doing and the being, the silence and the action, the heaven and the earth, the sacred and the everyday, everything vibrates in unison. The soul no longer seeks approval, for it knows itself. It doesn't need recognition, for it is already complete. Everything it does is out of overflow. It's out of love. It's out of truth. But this manifestation is not static. It is alive, dynamic, organic. The golden soul does not crystallize into spiritual identities. It does not confine itself to titles, roles, or forms. It understands that the flow of life demands constant renewal, and for this reason, it remains in deep listening, in openness, in receptivity. It reinvents itself, repositions itself, rebuilds itself, because it knows that life is movement. Enlightenment is not an end point, but an ascending spiral that always leads to new layers of expansion. The soul that fully manifests itself continues learning, continues feeling, continues evolving. And it is in this recognition of impermanence that its true strength resides. Living enlightenment on earth is also to be a lighthouse. It's understanding that by allowing yourself to shine, you light up paths for others. Not imposing, not evangelizing, not converting, but being a living example. An example that doesn't demand perfection, but presence. That doesn't promise paradises, but reveals that paradise is a state of being. A lighthouse doesn't chase boats. It simply shines. And by shining, it guides. The golden soul understands that the greatest service it can provide to the world is to stay aligned with its essence, even when everything around seems to crumble. Because it's in this alignment that the deepest healing power resides, the coherence between who you are and how you live. This manifestation also reflects in how we relate to the earth. The golden soul understands that this planet is not a place of exile, but a sacred garden. Nature is seen as an extension of the soul itself. Every tree, every river, every animal, every stone, everything vibrates with the same consciousness that animates human beings. Therefore, caring for the planet ceases to be an agenda and becomes a natural reflection of the state of unity. Consumption becomes conscious. Choices, simpler. The lifestyle, more connected. Spirituality becomes ecological, not as an ideology, but as a consequence of expanded love. The earth is not just a place of passage. It is a fertile field where the soul plants, blossoms, and reaps eternal fruits. In the social sphere, the golden soul manifests its light in every human interaction. There is no longer room for competition, manipulation, control, or domination. Relationships become sacred mirrors, where vulnerability is strength, dialogue is a bridge, and affection is the foundation. There is no longer fear of being seen, nor of seeing the other. There is only a constant invitation to truth. To live enlightenment on earth is to make room for the other to exist in their fullness, without judgments, without impositions, without masks. It is to allow love to circulate freely, without invisible contracts, without power games, without emotional dependencies. It is to love simply because loving is natural. This soul, too, finds pleasure in the simple things. It rediscovers the beauty of the ordinary. A hot coffee, a long hug, the sound of rain, the morning light coming in through the window. It no longer needs grand events or extraordinary experiences to feel alive, because it lives in a state of permanent gratitude. Every moment is enough. Every gesture is sacred. Every detail is an opportunity for presence. And this presence is the gateway to the divine. The extraordinary reveals itself in the simple, because everything is now seen through the eyes of the soul. The manifestation of the golden soul also revolutionizes the relationship with time. There's no more rush nor procrastination. There's rhythm, there's listening, there's synchronicity. Time ceases to be a tyrant and becomes an ally. Every cycle is respected. Every pause is valued. Every season has its lesson. Life is no longer lived by the clock, but by inner wisdom. Actions are born from intuition. Rest comes from real necessity. Goals are organic. Decisions are fluid. Time ceases to be linear and reveals itself as a spiral, where everything happens in the now. And in this now, the soul manifests itself in its entirety. But living in enlightenment on earth also requires discernment. One must protect their field. One must say no. One must remain centered amidst distractions. The golden soul learns to recognize what nourishes it and what drains it, and it chooses with firmness and tenderness where to place its energy. This is not selfishness, it is wisdom. It is understanding that light can only be given if one's own temple is lit, that love can only be shared if the heart is whole, and that service can only be genuine if it comes from the center, not from scarcity. Life then ceases to be a field of trials and becomes a field of revelation. Everything is a message, everything is a mirror, everything is a path. There is no longer a separation between the spiritual and the material. Work is service, leisure is meditation, the body is a temple, the other is a master, the planet is an altar. The golden soul lives in a state of reverence. It touches everything with respect. It speaks with awareness. It acts with compassion, and in this state, the earth transforms, not by external decree but by the frequency it anchors. The new reality is born within, and it expands outward. Finally, to manifest the golden soul is to live in totality. It is to honor all parts of the journey, the falls, the pains, the fears, the silences, the ecstasies, the encounters, the losses, the new beginnings. It is to recognize that everything was necessary, that everything was an instrument of refinement, that everything was love in various disguises. The soul that manifests itself understands that it was never lost, that it was always on its way, that it was always guided, and that now, with the eyes of remembrance, it can fully live what it has always been: light in form, incarnated spirit, source in living expression. This is the end of the search and the beginning of true life. Mind Unfettered, now it's up to you. What was the moment in your life when you felt, even if just for an instant, that you are living your deepest truth. Share in the comments. Your story could be the mirror another soul needs to awaken right now. We are many manifesting the new consciousness. We are the golden soul in action. And if this part touched you, the next step of the journey is already waiting for you. Click on the next video here on the screen to dive into the Book of 33 Steps, the Hidden Map. Jesus left for enlightenment, where we will unravel the forgotten steps that Christ himself left as a map to enlightenment. We'll meet there, Mind Unfettered.